It's time for Team of the Year in NHL 25, and we are picking our Teams of the Year for the NHL and the PWHL. We always do this, and we love doing it. It's always fun to argue about who the best players in the world are in the last calendar year in both the men's and women's games. How you guys feeling about this?
Feeling great. It's nice to have Mr. Glisterman behind the desk
I guess
today.
I should have mentioned that first. No DZ, but we got Sam filling in.
And I'm in Jesse's spot too. I don't know how to feel about this. Should I talk loudly or eat something on camera? Is this the
Don't take your shirt off.
Big teeth to fill. Sam. Big teeth to fill.
Last year when me, Poc, and Z did this, we asked who was going to be on the next Team of the Year nominees when we did this. And Poc rang up an interesting name.
I don't remember this at all.
Clayton Keller was the name that Poc brought up as
Yeah.
being a nominee. He is not this year. You're disappointed.
Not really. I think last year there were so many nominees that he just came to mind as someone who, like, okay, he had a good season. He was a good player. I think he's kind of underrated. Still think he's underrated.
Yeah.
Utah in general has been solid this year. Definitely not Team of the Year worthy, but I was just more so giving love to someone. And Z he lost his mind. He still talks to me about that. So it is what it is.
Well,
this year I'll say another weird guy that no one's thinking of as well.
Perfect. We'll keep on par with that. We love to see it. As you mentioned, though, less nominees this year. There's only 7 for both the men's and the women's side of things. For forwards, 5 nominees for defense and 3 nominees for goalies. We're going to start with defense and goalies for both the NHL and PWHL. Let's start with the NHL. The nominees for defense in the NHL: Quinn Hughes, Cale Makar, Adam Fox, Evan Bouchard, and Roman Josi. Poc, let's start with you. We're only picking 2 for our NHL 25 Team of the Year.
All right, I feel like this is fairly straightforward just because these 2 guys in particular were so strong this year. So I'm going to pick Cale Makar and Quinn Hughes. I will add one little note, and it's something that Marc-Edouard Vlasic brought out, legend on Team Canada in 2014. He had a quote.
Wild reference.
Loves dogs.
Yeah.
Pickles.
Loves dogs.
Classic.
An underrated player.
Yeah.
And I think he would have benefited from an award like this. He mentioned that it's ridiculous that the NHL does not have an award for the best defensive defenseman in the league. Because every year the Norris just goes to, the guys who rack up a ton of points. And we're looking at here now the Team of the Year nominees, guys that rack up a ton of points. I would have loved to see someone who is maybe a little bit more solid in the defensive zone. But I still think it would be Quinn Hughes and Cale Makar.
Like who?
We'll discuss in a second.
discuss.
Let's
think about
let's go around the table here and we'll see if anyone has anyone different. Jesse.
I'm going to go with the same guys. 2 just absolute horses. Not particularly big horses, though, which is interesting. I think they're both under 6 feet.
correct? Medium-sized ponies.
Medium-sized ponies for sure.
Great skaters.
Oh yeah, great skaters, and and to add on that, like offensively, the guys, in the game right now, and yeah, they're just so valuable to their teams. So I'm gonna go with those 2.
Sam, same.
Ditto. I think this is going to be the easiest one across the board. Is certainly the way I'm looking at it. Like, again, I think I agree with your Vlasic statement, by the way. As a stay-at-home D-man myself, who doesn't really light up the score sheet, I too would like a trophy one day. But yeah, I'm with you. I think these 2 might be unanimous.
That's a clean sweep across the board. It is. I think, like you said, the easiest decision that we could come to as far as the defensemen. Both in the last calendar year are 1 and 2 in points. Cale Makar led all defensemen in goals, so not really surprising. I guess my question I want to pose to you guys, and anyone that plays NHL 25, these guys are going to be the funnest players to use for sure when they get their Team of the Year cards, if we're predicting this correctly, as we have. But if you were to pick a 3rd spot in there between the other nominees, Josi, Fox, Evan Bouchard, all very viable options, all very deserving of being in this conversation, who are you picking and why?
Everyone knows I love Roman Josi. Sometimes a little bit too much.
You do love Roman Josi a lot.
But I'm going to go with Evan Bouchard because he was so good during the Cup run for the Oilers. So I'm going to go Bouchard. He racked up a ton of points last year.
I'm gonna go with Josi. Perennial horse, complete stud, but you can't really go wrong here.
Yeah, I'm going to go with you. I think Bouchard made a case for himself in the playoffs, and I think that's when it matters most. Again, absolutely stand-up guy. Like, you kind of want that in a Team of the Year. You want him to perform when it's most important.
Helps when you're playing with McDavid and Draisaitl.
Hey, they don't call it the Boosh bomb for him passing the puck. That guy can
Who's
rip the
getting
puck.
in the puck?
Okay, it doesn't matter. You're telling me the forwards on Nashville don't feed Yossi at the point?
Not at the same level.
Okay, fair enough.
Look, you can't really go wrong here. You can't go wrong.
I'm gonna go with Adam Fox's mine. I've been a big Adam Fox guy for a long time. I feel like he's maybe a little more complete of a defenseman as those two guys, Yossi and Bouchard, and he's up there with points, obviously, with all these guys. So, like you said, I don't think you can go wrong with any of them. And for NHL 25 players, you're going to have the ability to play with all these guys. Nominee packs with all of the players that have been nominated for Team of the Year will be released on January 22nd. Defenseman and goalie winners for Team of the Year, upgraded versions of these nominee cards come out the 31st. Forwards come out the 24th, and all of the nominees are out right now. Let's move on to goalies for NHL before we get over to the PWHL side of things. I think this one is another easy one, although there could be some arguments made. Nominees are Connor Hellebuyck from your Winnipeg Jets, Sergei Bobrovsky, Stanley Cup champion for the Florida Panthers, and Igor Shesterkin, a guy that I think a lot of us view as the best goalie in the world, even though the hardware hasn't been there in recent years. Let's start with you, Sam, on this one. Who is your Team of the Year goaltender on Sam's NHL 25 Team of the Year?
Don't mess this up.
Listen, I'm going to go with the only hardware that counts. That's the Stanley Cup.
Wow.
That's the Stanley Cup.
Okay.
Listen, Jess.
This is different.
I think he's a fantastic goalie. I think Hellebuyck is incredible. I think that when it matters most, again, like what I said about Evan Bouchard in the playoffs, I think that matters when you're playing for the Team of the Year. I think it matters when you can step up in a big game or step up in many big games like Bobrovsky did.
All right, whatever. I'm going to go with a guy named Connor Hardybuck. Ever heard of him? First,
I've actually never heard of someone by that name.
No, first it was Vesnabuck. But now I think we got to start talking about Hardybuck.
What about Playoff Buck, buddy? How about that? Ever heard of him?
How about Shut the Hell Up Buck, buddy? Ever heard of that? Taste this, man. Yeah, well, look, obviously we're going to see what happens in the playoffs, but Hellebuyck, Vezina winner last year. And what he's doing again this year. Unbelievable. Like, backing it up. But you are right. He does need to get it done in the playoffs. And I'm actually really curious to see what happens with Helly at Four Nations. Kind of like on that big stage. How does he perform against like top talent? Yeah, it's going to be great. So, yeah, that's my guy.
Yeah, we could see Ottinger by game 2.
Game
Oh, yeah, who are we going to see? Chi Montembeau for Canada by game 4?
I'm just getting you riled
Chi
up.
Montembeau, eh? Try and join the Montreal Canadiens on Team Canada this year, eh?
Your Montreal Canadiens, the hottest team in the NHL right now. But anyways, Team of the Year
get in the playoffs,
2025 could be all of Montreal Canadiens. Anyways, I agree with Sam. The number one piece of hardware in the calendar year 2024 was won by Sergei Bobrovsky. He was a crucial element to that cup run. If I had a Hart Trophy vote today, would I vote for Connor Hellebuyck? Probably. A Vezina vote for sure. But
the Panthers are such a better. That Stanley Cup team was, in my opinion, a lot better than what we saw from the Jets, at least last year, down the stretch of the second half of the season. But I don't know.
No, they were a very good team. But to me, that's what truly matters. I do agree with Sam. I also think that Sergei Bobrovsky very well could have won the Conn Smythe also. So you're talking about a cup winner, probably the MVP on the cup winning team, him or Barkov, like interchangeable. This isn't to take anything away for Hellebuyck. I know he was making those playoff jokes before. I think I have a ton of respect for his game. He is such a good goalie. But I think if you're rewarding the calendar year award, I think Bobrovsky had the most successful year as a goaltender.
It's an interesting take. I didn't think we would argue about this one as much as we are. I'm going to go with Hellebuyck as well, just for the fact that in this calendar year in the regular season, and I know playoffs, Bobrovsky obviously played more, Shesterkin obviously played more, but he played over 500 more minutes than Sergei Bobrovsky had to play in the regular season combined from January 1st to December 31st of 2024. The most wins, the most shutouts. Stats-wise, they're there for him. Obviously, he won the Vezina. I get the argument about him winning the Stanley Cup. I think if Bobrovsky would have won the Conn Smythe, I probably would have picked him because Hellebuyck's 2-year run is going to be better than what Bobrovsky did, but it's hard to argue against a cup-winning goalie that was the best goalie in the playoffs, and if he had won the Conn Smythe, the MVP of it. obviously played great in that game 7, but it did go to 7 games because he was a bit shaky and got lit up a little bit.
It's crazy that like his run up until I guess game 5-ish was like, we're talking about the best save percentage, goals against average by goalie, and sometime in the playoffs, like historic. And then McDavid and Draisaitl just lit him up like crazy.
And it sucks because it was like all for naught in the end. Like at that point, just eliminate him.
Just
then.
lose.
So it doesn't
just
happen.
Lose and allow the comeback. Yeah.
Yeah. Tough go for Bob, but I'm sure he's probably pretty happy about being nominated for Team of the Year because I think people have looked at him before the last 2 years of the Panthers' runs and were like, this is kind of like an overpaid guy to say the least. And he, I think, has erased all of those with his performance in the last 2 years, leading them to the Cup final 2 years in a row and winning it. So
all worth it.
All worth it for sure. Let's move on to the PWHL nominees for defenders. Aaron Ambrose of Montreal, Megan Keller from Boston, Ella Shelton, New York, Renata Fast, Toronto, and Savannah Harmon, who's now on Toronto, but more notably in 2024 played with the Ottawa Charge. Poc, we'll start with you for this one. We got 2 defense positions to fill. Who are you going with?
I think this is a tough one as well. Like it's like we said, we start off with defensemen in the NHL, and we all kind of agreed in there.
We're like, easy.
I think there's going to be some tough decisions since then. I'm going to go with Ella Shelton and Aaron Ambrose though on these ones. They racked up a ton of points. They were crucial parts for their team. They do it on both ends. So those are going to be my 2 picks.
I'm going to go with the same ones, and I'm going to say as well, Aaron Ambrose, friend of the show, friend of the program.
Friend of the program.
Very much so.
Absolute beauty. Every time we get to interview her or do anything with her, she's always got just a great attitude, and great that she's doing so well, and you love to see it.
Aaron Ambrose won Defender of the Year.
Correct.
Okay? I'm with you. But, like all things, I care very deeply about what matters most. Okay? And I want to see people actually perform really, really well. So that, I think, is a guarantee. Lock it in. Am I crazy to say Renata Fast? I know I'm a bit of a Toronto homer, and, like, again, I love to see it, but, like, Renata Fast is nasty. That's my 2.
Can't really go wrong
I
here.
was going to say, you're not crazy to say that. I think if you watch all of these players play, like, Renata Fast skating probably stands out the most among this group of players. She's so fast, obviously.
Yeah,
That was
so
too
fast,
easy. That was too easy, pal.
Very much, like, her edge work is incredible. Like, she is such a good skater and a strong skater for
Fun
Toronto.
to play in the game.
Fun to play in the game for sure, so that helps if she gets an upgraded card. I see where you're going with that. I think Aaron Ambrose is a lock being Defender of the Year, and I'm going to also pick Aaron Ambrose. But I'm going to go with Megan Keller for Boston as my second player. She was a finalist for Defender of the Year along with Ella Shelton, a great offensive player. Unlike those players, though, and Aaron and Ella specifically, didn't have a lot of power play production last year or this year, but is still putting up a lot of points. And I think she's so tough to play against, probably a little more of a more physical player than those other ones are that are the nominees in this category. And she's just been a staple for Team USA and obviously for Boston over the years and in the first 2 years of the PWHL. So I'm going with Megan Keller for my second one. I, again, don't think you can go wrong with any of these
I was going to
choices.
say,
there's so many good ones, and the margins are so slim for this.
Yeah.
Speaking of margins being slim, goalies next for PWHL. And this, I think, might be one of the toughest choices we have. We've got Aaron Frankel for Boston. We've got Anne-Renee Desbiens for Montreal. And we've got Kristen Campbell for Toronto. The reason this is so tough is because if this was just a last season award, I think it would be unanimous Kristen Campbell. But based on the play of these 3 this season, it's not as easy as you think. So I'll start with you, Sam, for this one.
It's harder because you have a slightly smaller sample size from this year versus last year, right? And again, like Luca, you brought up a point before we started that their season starting, like we get the full 2024,
year,
right? To understand. In my head, I think if you look at it based on the entire calendar year, Desbiens has to be the best.
Interesting.
I think I look at it and I say, again, performance over a longer period of time for this matters, right? I think that's what you want someone to be on the Team of the Year is you don't want someone to get hot for a little while. You want continued success too. I know that it speaks a little bit differently for some of the hardware stuff that we talked about before, but I think she's been great for so long.
It's not a bad shout at all. Jesse.
I'm gonna go with Aaron Frankel. Just like looking at her stats, like ridiculous stats last year. Like not like her record was good, not great, but I mean, like a 929 save percentage is pretty darn impressive. So, and a 2.00 goals against average, and I feel like I just like her.
Had a nice little playoff run too there.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's
Played more games than any goalie in the playoffs. Minnesota, I think, is probably a shock that they don't have a goalie on this list considering they won, but they did split their goaltending in the playoffs.
Yeah.
5 games for Hensley and 5 games for Matty Rooney. So that's probably why there. Poc?
I'm gonna go with Kristen Campbell, and Sam touched on this a little bit. So when you're looking at the full calendar year, last season, the entire season took place in 2024, and such a small chunk of this season took place at the end of 2024. So I just feel like she won goaltender of the year a year ago. I feel like she deserves to be on the team of the year.
It's a tough argument to argue against just because she had 7 more wins than anybody last year, 16-6, an incredible record. And playoffs, she was still good. She wasn't the reason that Toronto was eliminated by Minnesota for sure.
Their team name's Toronto. Of course they're going to blow a 3-1 series.
Come on. That's probably it. But that said, tougher start to this season. But it's been a tough season for Toronto to begin with. And they made a trade to shake things up and try and kind of get back in the win column here. But I don't think their tough start can be associated with Kristen Campbell's play. She's been outstanding for a second year in a row, or a second season in a row, I should say. I think I'm going to go with Kristen Campbell as well. I think just winning the inaugural goalie of the year, being as good as she was last season, that has heavy weight in my mind. So it's the other goalies in the playoffs, especially like Desbiens, obviously not the reason why Montreal ended up bowing out to Boston in the first round, but they lost in the first round. And then I know Aaron Frankel was really good in the playoffs last year, but just didn't have as strong of a regular season last year or this year, the numbers wise, to compare with Kristen Campbell in my mind. So that's why I'm going with Campbell for goaltending. Again, reminder, defenders and goalies team of the year cards, upgraded cards when the winners are announced. That'll be on January 31st, and that's when they'll go live in the game. But all of these nominees you can play with and get their cards starting on January 22nd. Let's move on to the forward groups for both the NHL and PWHL. We'll start with the PWHL this time for forwards. A lot of great nominees. We can only pick 3 of them, but we've got first ever league MVP Natalie Spooner for Toronto, Marie-Philippe Poulin for Montreal, Sarah Nurse for Toronto, Alex Carpenter for New York, Emma Malte, Toronto, Taylor Heisey, Minnesota, and Brianne Jenner for Ottawa. Poc, we will start with you. Your 3 forward team of the year players.
I think the first name on my list has got to be Natalie Spooner. Leads the league in points. Such a great regular season with Toronto.
It's too bad
league
she got
MVP.
hurt, eh?
Yeah.
It's honestly an argument for her, considering how their season has dropped off from last year being one of the best teams to this year being out of the playoffs if it started today kind of thing.
Yeah.
They miss her a lot.
Number 2, I'm going to go Taylor Heisey. I think what she did as a rookie, coming in, being the first overall pick, like there's pressure that comes with that. And the fact that Minnesota won in the first year, like that's a tremendous accomplishment. And she played a big role in that.
She's also the homie.
Yeah, she was
also
she was in between the pipes with somebody. At the stable.
We did 27 questions with Taylor Heisey. Like every time we're with Taylor Heisey, she's great. Unbelievable energy. Like really good for the game.
Playoff MVP as well.
Yes.
Oh, is that good?
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Oh, okay.
Pretty
That is
clutch.
good.
Yeah, I never
Pretty
been it.
clutch.
It's all right.
Last name, had some trouble with this, but I am going to go with Marie-Philippe Poulin. Wow. Just a legend of the game. Her goal the other week was actually the goal of the week on the BarDown podcast as well.
Yeah.
No,
Still
just
got it.
Yeah.
such a great player. She leads on the ice, off the ice, face of the franchise for Montreal, and she's continuing. Even as she gets older, she continues to put up insane numbers.
I actually have the exact same 3.
Okay.
But Sarah Nurse also the homie, and she's so skilled. Like I really like watching Sarah Nurse play hockey. Great skater, just plays hard. But I have the same one. Taylor Heisey is super impressive what she's done already. Like super, super impressive. MVP is a legend, and obviously what Natalie Spooner was doing last year was like, insane. Watching her highlights from last year were nuts. Like she was just so clearly the best player on the ice all the time.
Great list. I again, like we said, like I don't think you're going wrong with that. I think though, if we're talking calendar year here for MVP, despite the absolutely gross goal, if we're talking calendar year, I think Sarah Nurse might take MPP spot. The other two, I'm locked and loaded with you.
Yeah.
But I think I would sub in Sarah Nurse for MPP. I think she was second in points last year, just behind Spooner too.
Yeah.
And like legitimately, that's one of the things where like again, like over the course of a year, that's a lot of games to consistently perform like that. I think is really important. But obviously, MPP is like one of the most clutch performers of all time as well, which is like it's kind of nice to have,
Not bad to have on your
Worst
team of
things
the
to
year.
have.
For sure, Natalie Spooner, I'm in lockstep with you
Yeah.
guys there. How could you leave the first ever league MVP off? And again, especially because Toronto struggled so much without her this season, I think it's a clear Natalie Spooner starting in that 3-forward slot. I'm also going to select Taylor Heisey, playoff MVP. She was so clutch. And like you said, to come in as a rookie, that pressures the first overall pick in the PWHL and be the face of the franchise and also lead your team to the first ever Walter Cup. Incredible season for her, and she's having another incredible season this year. I'm going to switch up my third one. We've kind of mentioned a couple names. I'm going to go with one that you didn't mention. Alex Carpenter was an MVP candidate last year along with MPP and Natalie Spooner, and this year second in the league in points with 10 behind her teammate Sarah Fillier. I think she kind of goes under the radar, and I know New York didn't make the playoffs, so that's probably another reason why maybe she goes a little under the radar, but she's been so good for Team USA for so many years, a pure goal scorer. And I think it's also a testament to just her being so skilled that Sarah Fillier has been able to come into New York and be as dominant as she is because she's playing with someone like Alex Carpenter. So giving some flowers to Alex Carpenter because she deserves it. Not a lot of arguing as much as I thought. You know what? We have some different ones here, which I like. And I think we're going to have some different ones here with the NHL forwards for Team of the Year. I think we're going to have two of the same, but we'll go over the nominees first. Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl of the Oilers, Nathan McKinnon for the Avs, Nikita Kucherov, Tampa Bay Lightning, Artemi Panarin, New York Rangers, Kirill Kaprizov, Minnesota Wild, and Matthew Tkachuk, Florida Panthers. It's a tough three to put. Who are you going with, Sam Glisserman, as your 3 forwards for Team of the Year?
Oh, okay. I have a feeling that we're going to agree on 2 out of the 3. That's my guess, right?
Yeah.
I'm leading off bat. I'm going to say Connor McDavid, pretty good at hockey. That's a hot take. Go ahead and clip that one.
Pretty good at hockey.
Pretty good at hockey. I think Nathan McKinnon, absolutely disgusting. He is so fast. He is so strong on the puck. I think he's fantastic.
This is where it gets interesting.
This is where it gets interesting, Jess. And I have a feeling I'm going to disagree with you guys, and I might be overweighting goals here. But I think Kaprizov, it's a really, really interesting way to look at this. I get secondary assists. You know what I mean? Like that, and like if we're talking total points versus like pure goal scoring is something that is, first of all, in the game. No one's like, hey, did you check out this second assist I had in NHL 25? You know what I'm saying? That doesn't happen. You want to score goals, and I think Kaprizov has done enough over the calendar year of 2024. Leads tied, I believe, right now with goals.
Tied with Sam Reinhart.
56, 58?
56 goals,
56?
but he did it in 75 games, whereas Reinhart played 84. So a much more significant goals.
Crazy.
Yeah, 56 in 75
goals.
games in the calendar year is an insane number.
That's my number 3. And I know we're probably gonna have some disagreements about this from here.
That's fair.
No, I think that's a completely reasonable take to take Kaprizov. I don't think it's by any means. By any means, I don't think it's like no one's gonna give you a hard time about that. But you know what, fellas? With that said, I'm gonna take the first 2 that you said. I think we're probably all gonna be in agreement that McDavid and McKinnon are gonna be in that top 2.
Can I just stop you 1 second before you take your shirt off?
Don't do it.
And just,
Don't do it.
And just
I
let me
was
tell
going
you.
to start, but then stop.
Oh, because you're taking someone else.
No, just because I don't think I should be showing off my nipples anymore.
We're gonna get demonetized.
Yeah. No, you know what? I'm gonna go with Kucherov because I feel like every year in some way he just doesn't get the credit. And like we talk about goals, obviously, like Kaprizov and Reinhart, their goal scoring's been incredible. I don't think Kucherov's been that far behind in terms of their goal scoring. And like, this guy just drives offense. He generates tons of offense. He's always like, every year it's like Kucherov, 140 points, like 140 points. It's like, let's give this man his flowers. Like, I feel like he's like the most underappreciated player in like that top elite class. And he's incredible. Like, they're all incredible, but like, he is so damn good. Like, how many points does Kucherov have this year?
Like, I'm with
65?
So over the calendar year, Kucherov 1 point behind McDavid and 6 behind McKinnon with 137. He played 2 less games than McDavid, 7 less than McKinnon. He's got the best points per game of those guys over the calendar year.
Insane.
Also has the most power play points over that span as well.
Yeah, and like, again, you can make an argument for literally anyone. Like, Kaprizov would have been like probably my next best guy, especially the year he's having this year, and like even what he did last year on obviously like a relatively weaker Minnesota team. You know, like I don't think Minnesota has a Braden Point, right, or really a Jake Gensel for that matter. But look, Kucherov is like one of the best at what he does, and I'm giving him his flowers.
Poc.
I think I'm going to go with Kucherov as well, but when is the time when I can complain about players that were not nominated? Do I have to wait for that? Because
yes, you have to wait for
that.
I
will put Kucherov, and I get why he's there, but there's also guys that I would put next in line that weren't even nominated, and that's where I have some
we'll get to that.
complaints about. But we will get to that.
We will get to that.
Yes.
We will get to there. Only 7 nominees. I'm going to side with Sam here, and I'm going to go Kirill Kaprizov as well. I think that when you look at even strength goals for the calendar year, he's first. Didn't do as much on the power play as some of those other guys, which is a little surprising, honestly. But like the fact that he's so dominant at even strength, he's also 4th in points per game behind the big 3 of Kucherov, McDavid, and McKinnon over the calendar year. So this guy is he's a Hart candidate this year. He is carried Minnesota to where they are kind of, and just a dominant force. Minnesota with Heisey and with Kirill Kaprizov, 2 of the best hockey players in the world that you guys get to cheer for all the time. Pretty electric.
He's about to get a bag.
About to get a bag for sure. Let's go on to, let's do this then. Yeah, we'll talk snubs, okay? Let's talk snubs for, let's say, forwards, defense, goalies. You can do one for the NHL, one for the PWHL as well if you felt like there were snubs there. Poc, I'll start with you because you were pretty confident about a guy that I think I knew who you're going with here, but yeah.
There's 2 players that really come to mind, and they both play for the same team. And we talked about earlier how important it is to capture the biggest honor in hockey, and that's the Stanley Cup. And firstly, Sam Reinhart, the fact that he was tied for first in goals in the calendar year and won the Stanley Cup, I just feel like he continues to be very, very underappreciated, his whole career, really. And the number 2 guy is Alexander Barkov, and I know he does not have the numbers. I think he's tied for 39th in points in the calendar year. I don't really care about that because when this guy's on the ice and you watch him play, he just continually feels like he's probably the best player on the ice, and he does so much. And we talked about Bob. He had a great chance to win the Conn Smythe. Barkov was right there in those conversations until McDavid just decided to turn down rookie mode and just dominate every night. But my point is, I think Barkov at least deserved a nomination.
Yeah, I agree. Because Barkov does so much more than just score points. Like, he was so valuable, so unbelievably valuable for the Panthers. Arguably their most valuable, probably was their most valuable forward in the playoffs. And did he win he won the Selke last year, did he not?
I believe so.
And like that's such an important thing. He can do it all. So I think Barkov probably should have been tossed in there. But again, he continues to be the most underrated player in the world.
That bothers you, eh? Because everyone says he's underrated.
It's actually underrated how underrated he is. No, I think
it's underrated how appropriately rated he is in the hockey community. Because everyone just
I'm totally kidding. I'm so sick of hearing about Alex Barkov being underrated. Like, we get it. We get it. Like, he's not underrated.
This is why he's underrated. Because he wasn't nominated for 2 years.
We're going to keep feeding the narrative, hey?
This does directly feed that narrative.
It's true. Man. It does feed the narrative.
Okay, well, Mr. Underrated, underappreciated Alex Barkov, that's what I would have had.
I mean, I wasn't going to say Barkov. I think he is properly rated because everyone talks about him already, about being underrated. I will say, your first choice, I'm with you. I think putting pucks in the net matters. I think that he's tied, right, for first.
Sam Reinhart? Yeah.
Sam Reinhart. first in this calendar year in terms of goals.
So good.
So good.
Those are good shouts. I'm going to go with a couple PWHL players that I thought were snubbed. Matty Rooney for Minnesota, the goaltender, outstanding last year, and especially in the playoffs. But this year, she is their number one goalie and has some of the best stats in the league. 5-1, a 1.96 goals against. It's been more of her and less of Nicole Hensley that the split we kind of saw on their way to win the title. And then I want to give a shout out to Kendall Coyne-Schofield as well. PWHL winner, captain of that team. 16 points last regular season. She's near the top of the league this year in points. Had a good playoff run for them. Another player that we talk about in the same ilk is Marie-Philippe Poulin, where like she's just a legend of the game, but as she gets older, the skill is not diminished. The speed at which she plays with is not diminished. And so I think she could have snuck in maybe for that forward group, but I understand why she isn't.
I have one more.
Yeah.
We're talking about goalies in the PWHL.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you wanted to bring her up.
Okay, Corinne, I see you. Your stats are electric, okay?
Especially this year.
Especially this year, but also last year, because I'm looking at how many games you played, and I'm taking a look at, again, your overall statistics. I think you got snubbed here a little bit. Sorry, I get. Should I not say snubbed?
No, you can say snubbed.
I think you got snubbed,
there you
all right?
go.
I think, again, if you take a look at it over enough games played, I think that's a snub. That's just me, though. But again, it's hard. Like, it's hard.
It's hard.
There's only so many spots.
Especially with only 7 nominees.
That's
what
what I
can
mean.
only take, or I guess goalies 3
Goalies
nominees.
3.
You can only take 1.
Yeah.
Totally understandable that people
It's
are going to
hard.
get left off of these nomination lists.
Yeah.
But they can play their way onto them this calendar year, and that's what we're going to do next. 1 player or 2 players from each of you that you think will be a nominee or potentially a Team of the Year player when we do this again next year.
I'm going to save myself from a Clayton Keller moment, and I'm not going to pick an NHL player. I'm going to go to the PWHL, and I'm going to say Sarah Fillier because she has been everything that has been promised and more. We watched her on the international level before she got into the PWHL, and she was dominant there. She's come in right away for New York, and she's already been so good. I think she's going to keep that up in 2025, and I think she will not only be a nominee, but she will probably be on the Team of the Year next year.
It's a great pick. I think you're probably right about that.
I'm going to go back to someone who we just talked about. I think Sam Reinhart will absolutely be on this next year. Like, give the man his flowers. He's an unbelievable goal scorer. I don't know what else he needs to do to be grouped in that category. And also, you know what? Call me nuts, fellas. Give me Josh Morrison.
I knew it.
Like, come on. Like, this guy's easily one of the best defensemen in the league. Like, he might actually be the best left-handed defenseman that Canada has in general. Like, he's up there. He's so good. Like, and I just feel like if he played in any other market, people would be raving about him more. But it's all good. We'll our little secret in Winnipeg. It's okay.
If he played in a different market, though, you wouldn't be raving about him this much.
I would
Off the
think
fair.
that he's pretty sick. I'd say, like, this guy's awesome. Unless he plays for the Leafs. Then
I don't know. You just love your Winnipeg D. You're always walking in here talking about how good Logan Stanley is every week. You know, you overrating your guys.
Surprised that he's not a Team of the Year nominee
You like
next year.
Stanley?
all height team. Enough. Sluta.
What does that mean?
Stop in Swedish.
Swedish?
Sluta. Nu är du lugna fin.
Turn on the auto captions for that one.
Yeah.
Sam, Team of the Year nominee next year.
Speaking of backing your guys, I think you guys are going to hate this, but I think I love it based on where he is, what he's done so far this year, and what he needs to do for the rest of the year. I have a feeling, despite all of the noise and nonsense in the offseason, that Mitch Marner is going to find himself.
Ooh, I love it.
I think he's going to find himself in the nominee list this upcoming year.
Because you could also make the argument for Nylander being in there.
Totally.
Yeah. Sure.
Again, like, I think you could do, and again, that's not to underrate people like Tavares, who's also had a crazy, excellent season, especially coming away from losing the seed.
Bad with that injury.
100%.
He'll be fine.
Exactly.
Not that
But
bad.
legitimately, I think Marner is doing what he needs to do, and I think that, again, in terms of players that you like to play with, I think in game, I think Mitch Marner is going to find himself as a nominee this upcoming year.
It's a great shout. I'm going to go to a PWHL player or two as well, on defense specifically, and both again for Minnesota, which they are just such a talented team. If you haven't watched them, I know.
Just
Minnesota Wild fans hate me. Minnesota Frost fans are gonna love me. But Claire Thompson and Sophie Jake, two young Canadian defensemen. Sophie Jake traded from Boston to Minnesota last year, had a great playoff run, and has been great this season. They just activated her from IR, so she's back in the lineup. And then Claire Thompson, who was in medical school last year, didn't play for New York, signed with Minnesota this year, was traded there. I forget how she got there, but she's in Minnesota now and leading all defensemen in points so far this season with 10 and 11 games. Everything Minnesota could have asked for. There's a reason why Canada is so high on her when it comes to international play, but also why she is considered one of the best young players in the world. So I think by the end of next season, both of these players will be in the conversation for defense nominees in the PWHL, and rightly so. Just to recap, our teams of the year, we'll put up the graphics right now for Poc, myself, Jesse, Sam. We'll kind of cycle through them. Had some arguments here, but I think all in all, really good team of the years, and we're excited to play with them. Hopefully, if we got these right in NHL 25 come January 24th and January 31st. Reminder on when you can catch all of this stuff in-game. Nominees will be in packs on January 22nd, so you can play with all the nominee cards starting on the 22nd, and then they get upgraded versions, which you can trade in your nominees for the winners in-game. Forwards on the 24th, defense and goalies on the 31st. So those are the important dates to keep an eye on. And we're going to be reacting to who the winners are as well on both of those dates. So 24th, we'll be reacting to forwards. And then 31st, we will be reacting to defenders and goalies for both PWHL and NHL. And we'll see who got the most right, because I think that's the fun part of all of this is who actually predicted this correctly. I'm confident that I did, but
no.
Just
cut it.
Cut the video.
Cut it.
And also, did we get any of these wrong? Do you have a better list than us?
Yeah, make a better team
Put
of the year.
it in the comments now. Timestamp it. We'll be able to tell. And if you get it right, maybe we'll give you a little shout out in the winner's reaction video.
There we go.